I think if this is the end of Johnny's time here in Kansas City, I think he's a surefire sporting legend one day. Time will pass. There's people to get in before him. Roger's got to get in there. Beasler's got to get in there. But I think that Johnny and Tim are both deserving. Graham's got to get in there. But I think Johnny and Tim are both deserving of being sporting legends for what they've given to this club.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of No Other Pod. I'm Jimmy, along with my good buddy Dan. And Dan, last home game, 2024, has come and gone. Perhaps the last game at Children's Mercy Park for some rather important players in club history. And it was not a fun time, I will tell you that. But how are you doing? Hopefully better than Sporting KC was on Saturday night.
I'm fine. Got to tell you, I didn't watch this game live, so I'm great.
Yeah.
And seeing how it went, give me a reason why I should go back and watch this game and not just look at the lowlights. You know what I mean? LAFC is a really good team.
Mm-hmm.
Really good team. And so how we've been all year, you just kind of knew things were going to get wild, and not for us, not in a good way.
Yeah, we knew that LAFC was still fighting to secure a home playoff spot, and we knew that they're a very good team. Obviously, we just played them in the Open Cup final just recently here, so we knew this would be tough. I think we talked about it last week that it would be a tough game, so we'll talk about everything that happened in that game as much as we may not want to. But then after that, I want to move on to sort of what it means for some key players like Tim Melia and Johnny Russell, because there's a lot of unknowns. And I'm not trying to dismiss that there's one game still left in the season. We will talk about that in a couple weeks at Dallas on Decision Day. But, lots of potential change on the horizon for Sporting Kansas City. So we will talk about that. But it was not, outside of soccer, not a great sports week for you and I. Our beloved college football teams were upset. So I think maybe we just unplug and replug in the college football week from this past week, because a lot of teams fell.
There was an excellent there was an excellent WWE pay-per-view. I'll tell you that.
There was.
I don't know how KU can be so bad right now. They had so much promise this year, like preseason ranking and stuff, and it's like now they're losing to teams they have no business losing to, and people were talking about them competing in the Big 12. It's like, are you out of your damn mind? Not anymore.
I had a coworker who put some money on KU making the playoff before the year.
Oh, well, sounds pretty dumb, all things considered.
I told him at the time.
But all things fail. All things come to an end. We just wrapped Jersey Boys today, Sunday. I didn't cry. You should be happy I didn't cry. I did go to hug Frankie Valli backstage before we came on for our final Ragdoll number, the Hall of Fame ceremony.
Yeah.
And he inadvertently punches me in the nose. And so I'm out there singing Ragdoll, trying to fight back like unintentional tears that happens when you get bopped in the nose.
Punch in the face, yeah.
Woo! What a time that was. So,
well, it was a good show. I'm glad that you got to do that. And whenever you're in another Civic Theater performance, let us know. But you're right, KU. It was not fun. It was not a good time for KU fans. I'm a USC fan. We all know that. That sucked. Won on the road and lost to Minnesota in a game they should have won very easily.
Who the hell is Alabama, by the way? How did they do what they did to Georgia and then go play Vanderbilt? Mm-hmm. They were down by damn near 3 touchdowns at one point. I was just like, what is happening?
It was wild. It was pretty crazy. And
you texted me. You said, Bama, lol.
It was it's funny because, Vanderbilt, it's a very good school, very, prestigious academic institution, but not known for their football prowess. And they had never...
They're always a part of the big dance in basketball.
Good basketball school, but, they had never beaten, as an unranked team, they had never beaten an AP top 5 team. And Alabama was number 1 in the country. And they hadn't beaten Alabama since 1984, per our producer, Nick. And so they win. And then, of course, they tear down the goalposts. And they're in Nashville, Tennessee. So I'm seeing all these hilarious clips of just goalposts going down Broadway Street. And I saw some tweet, and I'm like, can you imagine these bachelorette parties that are dancing to Friends in Low Places for the 17th time, and suddenly they look out and there's just a bunch of nerds with goalposts like walking down Broadway Street.
You just threw some serious shade at people who enjoy that fucking song.
I'm not saying it's a bad song, but I'm like, Nashville, like bachelorette.
Oh, hey, you calm down back there.
My dog's very upset. Apparently, she's a big Toby Keith fan.
Yeah, how dare you? How dare you make fun of Toby Keith? Dude,
it's just
you're just mad because you can't sing it.
Low places, friends in low places. Yeah, it's I imagine, like, do you remember when the NFL draft was in Nashville and there were the clips of all the bachelorette parties who were furious because there was like 100,000 like dudes in NFL jerseys on the street ruining their bachelorette parties? And so I imagine
they planned better.
Right. They didn't think to look up when is the NFL draft and is it on Broadway Street? So I imagine the same thing happened. They're out there partying at, whatever, the Kid Rock beer bucket bar or whatever it's called. I don't know.
Sounds sticky.
Right. And that's the type of thing that's on Broadway Street. And they're having their fourth bucket of Natty Ice. And then all of a sudden the engineering students from Vanderbilt come marching down Broadway with the goalpost that they didn't throw into the river. It's just scenes.
Yeah. I mean, I have family from Alabama, so not exactly a happy time around the household, but hey, things happen. Casey Current got the damn thing done, breaking, tying records with the goal scoring and all that. So time.
It's they're coming down to their final game or two of the regular season, and they'll be in the playoff, and hopefully they'll make the NWSL final, which will be hosted at CPKC Stadium here in Kansas City. So make sure you check out Currently with Chris and Dan to stay up on all the Casey Current news.
Did I tell you we're going to the Summer Cup final?
In San Antonio?
Yeah.
That's amazing. You did not tell me that. I know you were talking about it.
Couldn't remember if I told you. Yeah. We're doing the thing. Oh, dude. Royals, bro. Mm-hmm. Royals in their hand, in the palm of their hands, and then you want to walk in 2 runs. Hey, mind if I load the bases here for you before you bring in a new pitcher and then he walks in a run? What a shitty time to be handed the keys to a game.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I was trying to keep an eye on the Royals game. I was trying to keep an eye on the USC game, trying to keep an eye on the Current game. All of these were happening at the same time as the Sporting Kansas City game. I was sitting next to Paul Carr from True Media, who many of you may know from Twitter, who's like the stat guy, and he's watching the Royals, and he's mad because he's a big Royals fan. I felt bad for him.
You're not. You're a Yankees fan. Let that be known, everybody. Don't hold this against the podcast because I hate him.
I'm wearing my Royals hat.
Yeah, what's that about? Why are you wearing a Royals hat? You could have done the funniest thing and worn a Yankees hat right now.
Hat. I did grow up rooting for the Yankees because my grandpa's from New York, so I have a Yankees hat. But look,
this is such a safe move. This is so safe.
It's one of those situations where no matter what happens in this series, I'm going to have a team to cheer for in the ALCS because I have an affinity for the Royals. I moved here in 2014, right when they made their first World Series run, got swept up in the Royals fever. But yeah, no, there's some nostalgia around the Yankees for me. I'm going to Old Yankee Stadium with family and whatnot. It's so
cool.
But I can't deny how good of a story it would be if the Royals beat the Yankees to go to the ALCS.
Yeah.
So
Monday night, I'm going to see if it fits, if I can throw my Chiefs jersey on and then throw my Royals jersey over that.
Yeah.
Those Chiefs jerseys are pretty thick, so it might be a little awkward.
You going to do the split screen, or are the Royals getting the big TV and the Chiefs are getting the second screen, or how you doing?
We're going to a buddy's house. We had Monday Night Football plans for a long time with the guy, so I'll probably have Royals on my phone, which nowadays, these motherfuckers are huge.
Yeah, they are. But I think the Royals, I want to say first pitch is about an hour before kick. So, how fast now playoff baseball sometimes can take a while, but you might be able to.
Especially when you change pitchers 9 times in one inning.
Right. But they might finish that game before, start of the second half or pretty soon into the third quarter. So, but hopefully it's a good night for Kansas City. I'll be cheering.
I like I like some of the changes they've made to speed up the game, dude, like the pitch clock and stuff. Mm-hmm. It's reminds me of Savannah Bananas a little bit.
Yeah.
They, can just throw it whenever they want.
So speaking of Savannah Bananas, did you see they did the Joe Hendry entrance?
Oh yeah,
and he's trying to get the fans to wave their hands, and fans were not.
Did you see they're coming to Kansas City?
Are they really?
They've announced their schedule for next year, and they will be here in May, I think.
Okay,
at Kauffman Stadium, bro. I think we should look at going. I entered the lottery to win tickets or to win the ability to buy them. So
you have to enter a lottery for Savannah Bananas tickets
just to be allowed to buy the tickets. Yeah, that's how it is.
That's wild.
I'm surprised the Royals let them do it because they can't even sell out their own stadium, and I bet Savannah Bananas sell that bitch out.
That's crazy. That would be.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit of Sporting Kansas City before we get into this game. The big news that sort of hit, unfortunately, before the game even started, which it kind of makes sense because he did not play in the U.S. Open Cup final against LAFC, is that on Friday, Sporting Kansas City announced that defender Dany Rosero underwent a successful arthroscopic procedure on his right ankle. He's expected to make a full recovery, but it'll take 8 to 10 weeks. So obviously, he is done for the remainder of the season. He played 28 matches across all competitions and had 4 goals in that time, including 2 in the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup. So, consistency for Rosero has been an issue at times, but I feel relatively comfortable saying that throughout the year, Dany Rosero was our best central defender. And so I think it's interesting that they did it, a few weeks before the last game rather than waiting to the offseason. But with the season, down the crapper already, why delay the inevitable? Just get it done.
I understand that 100%. Make him stronger for when the season starts next year. There's nothing to play for. U.S. Open Cup, done and dusted. Get his surgery out the way.
Yeah.
It's awesome that they can just do that. Hey, I need a surgery. Good, done.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I have someone at my work who they tore a quad muscle, and then it was like a week before they could even get into the doctor for their first consultation, and that's not even surgery. Then you got to schedule surgery after that and all that. So it's, imagine being a professional athlete where it's like you get an injury, and then it's like, oh yeah, the next morning the best doctor in the area is performing your surgery immediately.
I think I'm about to do the most old man thing in my life, and I think I'm going to get a hip replacement.
Are you really?
I think I'm going to schedule it. I got a call this week and probably set it up for next year for the deductible reasons, right?
Right.
I think it's got to happen. And I'm not even 40, bro. Like, that's crazy.
Things happen. I got physical therapy starting this week because I got a sore back and neck and shoulder and thing going on. It still hurts right now. So, this happens to get old.
Dang it. I wish I could go to physical therapy and that my bones weren't just like grinding on each other.
But Rosero, if he's out, let's say he's out the full 10 weeks, that'll take him into December, and then he'll have to work his way back up to match fitness and all that. So it makes sense that they start it now because the last game is FC Dallas in a couple weeks. So if they had waited until the off season, that would have been October 19th. That would have delayed it by 3 weeks. It would have pushed his recovery toward around New Year's time. And with us being in CONCACAF Champions Cup next year, first games, competitive matches could be the beginning of February. So this extra few weeks for Dany Rosero is very important, not just in his recovery, but to make sure he can get healthy, get back into match fitness, and get back into form with the rest of the team throughout the early and shortened preseason. So, yeah, man, it's gonna be pretty interesting. That we don't really know what the team will look like when it gets back early next year because there's all sorts of rumors about roster turnover and such. But we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Why don't we take our break here right now before we jump into this LAFC game? We'll take our break and we'll be right back.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com. I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I shouldn't have to jump through flaming hoops just to save a few bucks. Saving money should be easy with no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for just $15 a month with a purchase of a 3-month plan, I had to call them on it. And it turns out it really is just that easy. At Mint Mobile, you can get $15 a month with a 3-month plan of premium wireless service. The longest part of the process with Mint Mobile was the time I spent on hold trying to cut my old provider. So to get started, go to mintmobile.com/KCSNNOP. There, you'll see that right now, Mint Mobile has 3-month plans for only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. And all plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text on the nation's largest 5G network. So you can find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile and get 3 months of premium wireless service for just $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/KCSNNOP. That's mintmobile.com/KCSNNOP. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/KCSNNOP. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Hey, you gonna go see that new Joker?
No, I'm not. I did not like the first Joker.
Oh, no shit?
No, I was not a fan. I thought it felt that movie and the director thought it was way more self-important than it was. I was not a fan.
Cool. Well, this one, I'll let you know.
I have not heard good things about this one.
I haven't either, dude. I'm just kind of going to go in and be like, you know what? Paying $6 to just rip this thing apart right now. That's worth it. Let's have a little fun.
It's just, I don't know.
I love musicals, so maybe I love it. Who knows?
Well, it shouldn't be a jukebox musical. Like it's a jukebox musical, so that means like it's actually there's no original songs. Like it's
right
existing like pop culture songs.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I just Harley Quinn, like the only similarity of the character is the name to like actual comic book Harley Quinn. They've removed every character trait of Harley Quinn that there should be. Yeah,
that'll make me a little upset. But I do enjoy some DC comics. I don't know.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm just not a fan. I have heard The Wild Robot is supposed to be very good.
Saw it last week.
Okay.
Blew my mind.
I haven't seen it yet.
What a great overall movie from top to finish. I swear to God, it's going to win Animated Feature of the Year. 100% it will. And so good.
Yeah, so that's the movie I got to go see. Now that Rings of Power is done, and that was my main cinematic experience for the last month and a half or so, I'll go to the movies again.
You should. Oh man, I can't wait till you go.
Let's talk about this LAFC game here just briefly. I don't really want to. Yeah. We all knew.
Hold on. Make people come back to this podcast. Don't start getting all sad and people are just getting out of here. You know what I mean? We got to keep them. We got to keep them on the leash.
Well, we'll have some good quotes from Johnny Russell here that I want to play in just a little bit. So,
we're not fucking around.
You'll be able to hear from Johnny firsthand, and then we'll talk about there's a little bit of an online debate happening around Johnny Russell that I kind of want to get your take on here in a little bit. So, there's plenty of content that's not related to this game specifically still to come in this episode. But we do want to talk about the game. I think the most notable thing about this game is it was our loan signing from the summer window, Joaquin Fernandez. His debut was Sporting Kansas City. He started in the central defense next to Robert Volader. He had been battling with a quad injury, I think it was. So this, he got 45 minutes of work in. And yeah, I mean, outside of, a late scratch for Kyrie Shelton right before kick, he was supposed to start at right back and Jake was going to be in the midfield. He injured his calf in warm up, so he was a late scratch and Remy came in. But other than that, there's not a ton that was noteworthy about the lineup for Sporting Kansas City. I did notice Johnny Russell and Tim Melia both had their kids and their families out on the field during warm-ups in pregame. And they're both out of contract after this year. And it just, from the moment they stepped foot on the field, it felt like it was like, this might be it. And that kind of set the tone for this game that was a little somber, I guess you would say. Like, even outside of the result, it was like, it just kind of had this feeling of like, wow, this might be it for some pretty important players in club history.
I mean, you tried to get Peter all excited about it afterwards. He was not going to entertain you at all. I watched that just now, and that's okay. It happens sometimes. It happens to the best of us. Ask many, many people.
He was respectful. I mean, he wasn't mad. He was just like, hey, we still got a game. There's lots of conversations to have. So respectfully, I'm not going to talk about that right now.
Yeah, he's like, we're afterwards. We're going to finish the season, then boom, I'll tell you all you need to know.
Yeah.
I get it.
Tim, for what it's worth, we asked Tim Melia after the game, and he was like, I'm not even ready to think about that yet. Like, I'm not there. But Johnny, we'll play some words from Johnny that he had here in a little bit. He was a little bit more honest about his thoughts, with the future. But I mean, you look at the lineup that LAFC put out. I mean, again, we just saw them in the Open Cup final, and that this is this is a team that is just, in the words of Peter, they're a better team than we are. He just flat out said it, and it's true, and it came to fruition relatively early on in the game. They were controlling the pace of the game, and it took all of 13 minutes into the match for them to earn a penalty. I believe it was Zoran Basong who committed the foul in the box. Dennis Bouanga steps up, and in true Tim fashion, he stands there and stonewalls this penalty kick. Bouanga tries to send it right down the middle, and Tim just totally blocks it. What's unfortunate is nobody else on Sporting Kansas City really reacted after Tim blocked the ball, and Martinez for LAFC just charges the ball and puts it in the back of the net. There's nothing Tim can do there.
Disrespectful. It's so disrespectful to do Tim like that. Like, the man just sits there. Horrible penalty kick. Absolutely horrible. Like, that's your decision? Okay. Like, disrespect for Tim from the player taking the PK and from his own team to not clear that ball.
Yeah, it's and in true Tim fashion, when he was asked about it after the game, he goes, "If I direct it out of bounds or anywhere else, I don't need anybody else to worry about it." He's just taking the blame. And I'm like, you just saved a penalty from one of the best attacking players in all of Major League Soccer, and you're like, I still didn't do enough.
You're not thinking to redirect his kick. You're thinking
hard
to just
kick.
You're thinking just to keep it out of the net. Mm-hmm. And he's like, man, I really should have tipped it out of bounds. No, you were a wall. You did what you had to do.
Well, and we always ask him whenever he does this, like, how do you get such a good read on these penalty kicks? Because it's well beyond a fluke at this point. It's a feature of Tim Millia's ability to save kicks. And he said it's a million different things. You guys always ask me, and I always feel bad giving you the same responses. But we spend so much time on those things. They're a very good team. In that moment, you're probably going to see something a little bit more cheeky. It's very early in the game. You can recover from a missed penalty if it doesn't happen. So that's why I was kind of leaning toward the middle with a player like that who has gone down the middle in the past. So, he does his research. He's a very cerebral player, Tim is. And so, yeah, to be able to block that, it almost felt like sort of a representation of the season in a way, and of like Tim's time here. Like, he does something good. How many times has Tim just put his body on the line and made so many saves for us, and then the rest of the team just falls a little bit short and we end up losing points? Yeah, man. It's kind of a microcosm all in that one play.
Kind of how it is.
Just kind of unfortunate. So they go up there, and then what really felt like the dagger in this game was there was 2 minutes of stoppage time in the first half. Dennis Bouanga had the ball driving on the left side. He sends the ball across the face of goal. Tim can't quite get there, and it just bounces to Oliveira, who just puts it in an open net. Once they went up 2-0 just before halftime, I think all of the air in the stadium, if it wasn't already gone, just kind of left, and it felt like the players knew at that point that was probably it for this game.
Pretty sad deal.
Yeah. Again, it's just, Remy Voltaire's out there on an island with Dennis Bouanga. That's not fair to Remy. He's not going to be able to do that on his own. Tim can't get there. Joaquin Fernandez, can't really get there. And then it's just an easy tap in. And then finally, in the 70th minute or 69th minute, Aaron Long, he gets the ball, in the box. He's a defender. This is not something that Aaron Long typically does. He just has too much space and just lines it up and just puts it, a well-placed shot into the back of the net. Aaron Long should not have that much space in the box. He shouldn't be finishing goals like that, but he did. And that was 3-0. And that was the end of the scoreline. Mm-hmm. So, just a sad night overall for Sporting Kansas City. After the game, my eyes immediately went to Johnny Russell because I kind of wanted to see what his reaction would be. And he just stood there in the same spot on the field with his hands on his hips, looking around for probably at least 2 straight minutes, just didn't move. Like, if a player came up to give him a high five, he'd give him a high five, but he just kind of stood there looking around. And I don't think we know exactly what's going to happen with Johnny and his contract yet. He is out of contract after this year, but it certainly felt like he was standing there trying to soak it all in case this was his last time on that field as a Sporting Kansas City player. And that hit me in the feels a little bit. So, I know.
Sure, of course.
I felt like, I don't know, I kind of want your take on this. I feel like, people are going to talk, and they already are talking about Johnny Russell and his tenure with Sporting Kansas City, and he didn't win any trophies in his time here, and, his tenure as captain, the team wasn't very good. How much responsibility or onus can you really put on Johnny Russell about that? Because in my view, I'm sitting here thinking, nobody has ever questioned Johnny's effort or his ability. He's getting older, so he's slowing down a little bit, but he's not the one in charge of roster construction or financing player transfers or player acquisition or whatnot. He can only do as much as, the team around him, really. So I'm not sure it's fair to judge Johnny and his career in Kansas City by the fact that there are no trophies to go with it. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I don't think, it's not like his time in Kansas City was a complete failure. But it sucks because as a player, like, you do want to win stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to be rewarded and celebrate with your dudes. And we're talking like he's gone and nothing's been decided yet, obviously.
Sure.
You never know.
Yeah.
We're speculating.
We are speculating. I kind of get like you said, nothing has been decided at all regarding Johnny Russell. They said that there's no conversations that have been had yet. He's said publicly he wants to be back. It seems like from the people I talk to who are not decision makers in any way, that there's sort of like a feeling that this might be it. Like it's going to be hard to have him come back just because I forget what his salary is. I want to say it's like $1.4 million, or it's over $1 million right now. He's not coming back on $1 million+ deal. He'd have to take a pretty good salary cut to come back at this point. And so that's a question that only Johnny can answer. How much do you really want to be in Kansas City, and how much of a salary cut is it worth to you to stay here?
True. Yeah.
I don't know. It's tough, but
it's a big deal.
Yeah. I have a couple of quotes that I want to play from Johnny Russell from the locker room in the post game. We'll throw to this first quote here, and you can just hear in his voice just sort of how upset and dejected he is about the way that this season has gone. So here's the first quote from Johnny.
I'm sure there'll be change here in the offseason. Obviously, we need more players. It's a definite. I imagine there'll be, like I said, there'll be a few changes. Maybe a lot of new faces here next year. I said to you the other day, hopefully I'm one of them. But like you say, we were competing with these teams, maybe punching above our weight a little bit, but we were competing with these teams, and now we are, we're quite a bit off it.
I think it's just, it's interesting to hear him. Like, it's not even a question anymore. Multiple players in the locker room are just openly saying, yeah, there's going to be a lot of new guys here. Johnny said, we need more players. It's unusual to hear players just openly say that, like, yeah, we need more players. We need new players. And, Johnny said, hopefully he can be one here. But, yeah, you think back to, was it 2018 on decision day where we're playing LAFC and the winner gets first place in the Western Conference? And so he's talking about, yeah, we used to punch above our weight with these guys, and now we're quite a ways off. And you can just hear, Johnny's usually a very energetic and boisterous guy, and it sounds like, someone just kicked his puppy.
He does sound a little sad. I do wish it came with subtitles at times. I love the man to death, but I was frustrated. I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know what he's saying right now.
Yeah, just he wants new players. He says new players, new faces, and we're it's just not good enough. We do have a second quote from Johnny here, where I think he's talking a little bit louder, so you might be able to hear it a little bit better. But here's quote number 2.
Yeah, just taking it in, looking around. That was it. Enjoying it. Shitty season, but just taking a moment to take it all in, let it all soak in. So yeah, these like you just said to Daniel there, these guys have been behind me from day one. Been my biggest supporter throughout. Sucks, and it deeply hurts that I couldn't repay it this year. hopefully I've given them some great memories. But this year, not too many of them. That's one of the main reasons I want to be back and give them a little bit more before my time's up.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that even he doesn't know if he's going to be back. And he said it was a shitty season, and he was talking about trying to take it out.
No, he did not. He said it was a shitty season. I was taking a look around.
But yeah, I mean, he said these guys have been behind me from day one. He's referencing the fans because he was asked specifically about the fans. And I mean, you think back to Johnny's first season, and that was when, he got straight up in the face of Kendall Waston of the Vancouver Whitecaps, who was a menace of a defender at that time. And he was ready to fight him right then and there, even though Kendall had a foot on and probably 50 pounds on Johnny Russell.
Yeah, I got a buddy who saw Johnny, and his friend that was with him told Johnny really loved you in the Kendall Waston game or whatever. And Johnny goes, "Yeah, fuck that guy."
But that's
like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think if this is the end of Johnny's time here in Kansas City, I think he's a surefire sporting legend one day. Time will pass. There's people to get in before him. Rogers got to get in there. Beasler's got to get in there. But I think that Johnny and Tim are both deserving. Graham's got to get in there. But I think Johnny and Tim are both deserving of being sporting legends for what they've given to this club. There are people who have disagreed with me when I said that on Twitter, that you should have to have won a trophy to make it into the sporting legends, and that they don't think Johnny did enough in that sense to be a sporting legend. So I'm kind of wondering, we already talked about, it's winning trophies isn't all just on Johnny, but do you view him as a future sporting legend one day up on that wall?
I mean, probably. And I don't really understand why. I mean, just because the effort he put on the field, because really you do measure success with championship seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's weird to not have that from him, even though it seems like he is a champion, of our hearts.
Yeah. Well, here's some stats. Yeah, no, I do. I get it. And the last handful of years have not gone well. But it's, again, I don't believe that's Johnny's fault. But Mike Kuhn put up some stats on Twitter because he was dealing with some of the same stuff. So Johnny is second all-time in goals in Sporting KC history. He's got the second most goals across all competitions. He's got third all-time in goal contributions. He's fourth all-time in all competitions in assists, sixth all-time for Sporting Kansas City for MLS assists. And this is all while he has only played in the 13th most all-time minutes and 12th most appearances. So he's a very productive player while he's on the field, a more efficient player, more productive player than most other players in Sporting Kansas City history. Being second all-time in goals scored and third all-time in goal contributions, I mean, to me, that's where you're getting into that legend territory. But I also think you just can't dismiss sort of what he's meant to fans off the field and how much he ingratiated himself into Kansas City from the moment with that Kendall Waston fight and then on out. I don't know. For me, I'm probably a little bit more emotional right now because it's just happening, and it's I have the Vitamin C graduation song playing on repeat in my head as we're maybe never going to see each other again, but it feels like his time should be honored.
So take the photographs.
Right. Yeah. One of those, stereotypical songs.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Well, we should, I hope y'all enjoyed it. I mean, no one was ever mad at Johnny. In fact, when the fans were being dicks and being mean against the team, Johnny went over there, tried to fight a fan one time. Do you remember that shit?
Yeah.
So it's it's been a weird time, but to say that man isn't Sporting Kansas City, that'd be pretty crazy.
Right. And I think, the prevailing things that I'm hearing still are people aren't happy with Peter because when he was they're a better team than we are, people are whose fault is that? Which to an extent, yes. I mean, I am not absolving Peter Vermees of responsibility that he bears in this situation. I do think that it's not as black and white as people think, because I have heard more and more stories, and Peter has alluded to this more and more, of players that were good players in positions of need that Peter and Sporting KC agreed to personal terms on, agreed to transfer fees on. It was all done and dusted, and they took it to ownership, and ownership said no. So there was a lot of talk about mentality that needs to change, and the on-field mentality needs to change. You know who I think the number one mentality that needs to change is Sporting Kansas City ownership. Because you could fire Peter and bring in Pep Guardiola, and if they do not give the financial resources to bring in the players that are needed, does not matter who the coach is here. They're not going to be successful. So,
was there a time, was I supposed to remind you to say something on the pod or remind you to say something to me privately?
I got some off the record stuff I'll talk to you about.
Okay. Sorry.
I got nothing I can say on the record now, but I mean,
sorry, podcast.
I'm alluding to there are players that should have been here in Sporting Kansas City jerseys that are not here in Sporting Kansas City jerseys because ownership just did not want to pony up the money.
So when you look at that, I mean, and Peter can't get in front of a microphone and say, got to tell you, I would have a great team if ownership wasn't a bunch of tightwads.
Mm-hmm.
But he can't say that. So he has to be like, hey, we just weren't that good today. He has to do that generic bullshit when really, us as fans, how do you say ownership out instead of Burmese out? Because getting rid of an ownership means you lose your team.
That's a lot harder. I mean, that's a lot harder to do. And I mean, the only way for fans to really voice their opinion to ownership is with their pocketbooks. I mean, but that doesn't always work, because you look at just what happened with the Oakland Athletics, and they stopped going to games because of incompetent ownership, and now the owner's just moving them. He thinks he's moving them to Vegas. That's becoming less and less likely. So now he's going to be stuck for at least 3 years in a minor league ballpark in Sacramento. And
serious?
Yeah,
I didn't know about all this.
And the Oakland Athletics fans are there. It's a storied franchise, and they sold out their final game, started ripping out seats out of the Oakland Coliseum, and just literally take chairs with them.
I did do this. Yeah.
But I mean, it's just when ownership is a major part of the problem, it becomes very difficult, especially from a fan perspective.
Yeah. What do we do? I feel, it makes you humanize Peter a little more, because it's not his fault completely.
Sure. And like we said, there's blame to go around. This does not make Peter, and he'll say it, he's not absolved of all responsibility. There are things he could do better. But
this has been such a long year. Do you realize we made one stupid hire earlier this year after Brian Bliss was let go?
You mean there's the Gavin Wilkinson thing way back in January, and then Mike Burns was hired after Brian Bliss was let go. Yeah,
right. We've had two of those moments. Those two things don't even feel like the same year, but it is the same year.
Well, and they've also talked about they had talked about after Burns was hired that this is a 3-window fix. They tried to sort of lay the groundwork because this will take 3 transfer windows to fix. Now, what I don't think they communicated very clearly, and one thing I can say is when they said this is a 3-window fix, they meant winter, this upcoming winter window, then the summer, and the next winter window. Because if you look at when the contracts come off the books, by the time next winter comes around, between this winter and next winter, there's a lot of contracts that come off the books that give a lot of flexibility. People thought they meant starting this past summer window, and then they only signed Joaquin Fernandez. They didn't mean that summer window, but I think when they said 3 windows, and people were like, great, here's the first one, and then they signed one center back who then gets injured immediately, that led to some frustration. But
I mean, dude, there's a chance we bounce back next year. There's a huge chance.
Sure.
I have no idea. We could fix some things this winter, but I don't like that they put the expectation of this is going to take 3 transfer windows. Talk about job security for the new guy.
Well, I mean, I do. I mean, part of that is they are just MLS financial rules that you have to play within, and then you have to be able to find players. Winter window. I'm not a person that thinks that MLS should get on the European schedule, but the hardest part about MLS being separate from the European schedule is our off-season window is the middle of the season window for European teams. So it makes it more difficult to bring in players from European clubs because they're in the middle of their club season, where more, impactful transfers typically could happen in the off-season. So, but there were 12 players that were available in the team sheet for Sporting Kansas City on Saturday that are either out of contract or have options. So as many as 12 of those players could not be back with Sporting Kansas City next year, depending on how things go. I think a lot of them will, but we'll see. There are 16 players, I think, somewhere around there, 15 or 16 players on the current Sporting Kansas City roster that are either out of contract or have options this year that Sporting Kansas City could move on from. So
it's so weird that we're just treating this as the last game, even though there's still another game left.
Yeah.
But we don't play next week.
Right.
And I'm like, how are you going to take a week off for this international break just to have one game left? Like, what a way to have some drama waiting for decision day.
Right. Well, and there's I think there's 2 games maybe this week that are happening. New England and Columbus are playing, and LAFC are playing Vancouver. So I think those are probably left over from Champions Cup games earlier in the year that got moved around. So I don't know that there is a good Holiday Distillery toast of the match for this week in terms of performance on the field. I mean, Tim Melia for saving a penalty.
Tim Melia.
You could say. I'm going to say that my Holiday Distillery toast of the match this week, I'm going to give it to Johnny Russell, and I'm going to give it to Tim Melia, both of them, considering the amount of years that they've put to this club and that it may be their last time. I think Tim's more likely to be back than Johnny, but just, toast of a career. How about that? Holiday Distillery toast of a career for Tim Melia and Johnny Russell for what they've done for Sporting Kansas City.
It's so sad, dude. What a sad pod.
Well, what was nice is, because Ilya Sanchez is on LAFC. Once the game ended, he immediately went over to the Cauldron and stood there and applauded the Cauldron for a long time. And just, all the LAFC players, the rest of them were gone. And Ilya was there interacting with the Cauldron, saying hi to fans, talking to them, thanking them. So, I mean, it's been, 4 years since he left, and he's still a genuine person.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see.
I love that little man.
Yeah, I know. He's one where I understand why Sporting Kansas City moved on from him at the time, financially and everything. He kind of made sense, but he is probably one of my top 3 favorite players that have played for this club. In my time covering them, just because he's such a nice person.
Yeah.
So he and Tim Melia are up there too. Someone who is almost certainly gone, and he kind of said unspoken goodbyes without saying goodbyes. Andrea Fontes. He's out of contract after this year. He's almost certainly gone. In the locker room after the game, he came up to each and every one of the media members who were in the locker room and individually came up and shook our hands and said thank you and looked at us and whatnot. It felt like he was saying goodbye. So
damn, what an emotional night. Are you okay?
When Johnny, he didn't cry, but when he was talking, he looked like his eyes were welling up a little bit, and I was like, don't you do this to me, Johnny. If you start crying, I'm going to start crying. I'm going to look at Sperry. He's going to start crying. And then Chad's going to be crying. And then we're all crying in the locker room together.
Do you hear this? That's 5 dudes just crying in a circle.
But no, it didn't happen. So I don't know. It's just a weird time for Sporting Kansas City. There's a lot of change that's going to happen coming up. And it does feel like, I don't know. I mean, it feels kind of over the last handful of years, there's been a lot of change for Sporting Kansas City because some pretty big name players over the last handful of years have come and gone. So this just feels like this is sort of the final chapter of some major change, and it'll be pretty different potentially next year.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well,
should be interesting, but I don't know. We'll talk more about the Dallas game next week. For sure. We got a week off this week. What we do know is that Sporting Kansas City will set their lowest ever point total in a 34-game season, even if they would have won that game. That will happen. So it's it's not a good year, but it's turn the page, you move on. There are some silver linings. Steven Afrifa is going to be a very good player, I believe, for this club. Elenis Vargas has got quite a lot of potential. Jake Davis looks like he could be a very solid midfielder if we get another right back who can step into that right back role. So there's things to be excited about if you're a Sporting Kansas City fan going forward. I think we just have to see how this offseason plays out.
What you talking about? We still got a Dallas game.
I know there's a Dallas game, but it's 2 weeks away. So
there's stuff to look forward to. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, it'll be good. Where's Dallas in the standings right now? I think I had that up here a moment ago. Are they're not good either? I don't
think so.
We're not able to ruin their time. No, they're already eliminated. The Western Conference is already decided. So some seeding can move around, but nobody on decision day can make the playoffs because all 5 teams that don't make the playoffs, Austin, Dallas, St. Louis, Kansas City, and San Jose, have all already been eliminated. So,
wow. And so you got Philly and Atlanta still playing with Montreal and DC there. That's fun for them.
Yeah. I mean, this season as a whole, Miami already solidified the Supporters' Shield when they beat Columbus on the midweek. So, it's a relatively not exciting decision day on the whole compared to years past where we've had supporter shields coming down to the decision day. You've had seeding, playoff spots coming down to decision day. It's just really pride to play for at this point for Sporting Kansas City.
Yeah.
And it's always fun to beat Dallas. So I do hope that we can beat them. But yeah, I don't know. Was there anything else related to Sporting Kansas City or this game that you wanted to touch on this week?
No, dude, this game, I just want to erase it. The whole time I was kind of catching it while I was at my show. I was just like, I don't think I'll be watching the entirety of this game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think
so. Wash it out.
Ultimately, I think I would say this is, and like you said, there's still a game to go. We still have the Dallas game. We'll talk about that or whatnot. And then I think we'll probably bring some people on for some off-season interviews and talk about what Sporting KC needs to do to turn this thing around. But this is potentially the most pivotal off-season for Sporting Kansas City in Peter Vermes' tenure as coach. This is the time to turn it around, or this is the time where Sporting Kansas City could really shrink into perpetual mediocrity. And hopefully ownership is willing to open the purse strings and do what they need to do to follow the models of a Columbus or whatnot and be a competitive mid-market team. So we shall see. Is there anything else that you saw from this week? Like I said, Miami beat Columbus. That wasn't even really close. They're the Supporter Shield winners. Messi is probably going to win MVP, even though he's missed like half the games this year.
It's pretty dumb.
Of the teams that are in the playoffs, do you have a team that you're kind of like, oh, that might be my adopted team for MLS Cup playoffs this year?
No, not really. I haven't thought too much about that just yet.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I might look at somebody like Minnesota or maybe even, I don't know, Cincinnati. I don't know. I don't love Cincinnati all that much, but Minnesota I feel like a Midwestern kinship with. So maybe I'll root for Minnesota to
nice.
Try to go the distance if I need to. So anything else you want to talk about this week? I mean, Sporting Kansas City. I do think there will be more exciting things to come in the weeks and months in this offseason because I think there will be some significant movement. So we just got to get there.
Yep.
Well, thank you all so much for sticking with us this season. Send us a text message on the KCSN hotline powered by Mint Mobile. We'd be happy to read your comments, your questions, 913-407-6524. Let us know, is Johnny Russell a sporting legend to you? What are the positions you want to prioritize this offseason? What does Peter Vermes need to do to turn this ship around? So 913-407-6524, KCSN hotline, powered by Mint Mobile. Yeah, thank you for listening and sticking with us. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at NoOtherPod, at Dan Kooser, at JCMag03. Shoot us an email, nootherpod@gmail.com, or check us out on YouTube, KCSN Soccer, or via the Kansas City Sports Network app. But until next time, he's Dan, I'm Jimmy. We'll catch y'all later. See ya.
See y'all.